Thanks very much. It's my pleasure and honor to introduce my colleague, Jamie McCusker, who's the Director of Data Operations at my organization at RPI Tetherless World Constellation there. She's also the lead architect for the WIA's knowledge graph infrastructure that will be mentioned throughout. She's also a mover and shaker in mobilizing computational biological knowledge, and an all-round amazing researcher and hacker and friend. With that, I'll yield to you. And I'll
Thank you.
in front of you.
I'm sorry I made you a liar. I'm not actually going to talk about why is it all today,
well.
but that's okay.
But you can ask your questions about
Yeah, you could. Yeah, so I have a knowledge graph framework called why is. If this were a keynote from the beginning, I'd probably talk more about it. I'm also not really going to talk about language models at all. I'll save that for later. But anyway, okay, so, all right, there's the thing, and yeah. So today I'm actually going to be talking about something else entirely. I've been working with a number of institutions through the University of Michigan, where they've started a project called Mobilizing Computable Biomedical Knowledge, or MCBK. The idea is that it's really, knowledge graphs are computable knowledge, essentially. But it's not actually a very common structure that's used in the EHR space or in a lot of medical delivery. So the thing is, though, is that right now we're really we want to make everyone healthier, and one of the issues with that today is that there are there's this 60-30-10 rules. 60% of care on average is what is supposed to be based on the evidence or consensus. 30% is wasteful or low value, and 10% is active harm. And so how do we change those last two numbers? We need to really improve quite a bit of healthcare in order to do that. And one way to do that is to get knowledge to the people who need it when they need it. We need to literally mobilize it. And so there's a lot of things that go into this that we need to work on. I'm not going to go into these because I'm not a doctor. This is actually produced. Some of these slides are about introducing MCBK from doctors to other doctors. But basically, the decision support framework around biomedicine has been both fragmented through a number of different EHR vendors, but also has really suffered from a lack of standardization. But also, it's really hard to figure out exactly what what they need in terms of it. So there are medical calculators that are basically web pages with JavaScript, and you plug in a bunch of numbers and you get a number back, and maybe it's right. Or you have something really sophisticated like a machine learning model that can tell you whether or not your breast cancer is really bad. Or you have you might have diagnostic criteria or treatment guidelines, and these all have different representations. These all are different forms of knowledge, and it's really hard for a lot of doctors and other medical providers to keep track of these and to know what to use and when and where to find them. And there's basically a whole industry around even just knowing what they are. Within medicine, though, so we talk about evidence-driven medicine. A lot of evidence is really about knowledge, not so much about data. So it's interesting that actually the first keynote was very much about data and about aggregating data. The effort here isn't so much about data as knowledge. And so the knowledge that we're thinking of with this is about basically the result of a process where you analyze and check for bias. You might use data in order to produce this knowledge, but it's really there as kind of an actionable thing that's generalized across multiple entities. It's not just like about one thing or about one person. And so yeah, the thing that we have, one of the sayings is that data does not really save lives, but knowledge can. So the fact that we've gathered a lot of information about a disease itself doesn't really tell us much about the disease, but if we do some analysis and come to some conclusions, we can actually take those conclusions and act on them for treatment. So some basic examples of biomedical knowledge, or I think, as I was saying, predictive models. Computable phenotypes are a big one. Causal networks, practice guidelines, decision trees, which can often be both diagnostic and for treatment, and of course medical policies. How should we go about this process? So right now, so for a very long time, we worked with the type of knowledge on the left, human readable knowledge. We read it, it's text. It's very, very old, but very reliable technology. And it really is kind of the focus of biomedical libraries and search engines and databases and a lot of things. MCBK really tries to focus on the right. So making computable, machine interpretable, actionable knowledge that is integrated with patient data, integrated with the decision-making process, integrated with the workflow. It's not something that you have to carry into your head or in your backpack. It's something that is part of your process and helps you guide and inform your treatment planning as you do it. So the one thing is that right now, so the process of improving treatment in medicine is focused on, there's this basically data to knowledge, knowledge to performance, and performance to data cycle. And so what's happening is that we produce a lot of, and so as we go through this process, we're able to improve how people are treated. Now, right now, data to knowledge, that's, you do some research and you publish a paper. And then when you actually perform it, that's translational research. And that's also things like actually applying new clinical guidelines and coming up with new treatments and actually figuring out how to do it and then actually doing it. And then, clinical research is often that bottom section where we do a thing and then we figure out how well it did and what the outcomes are. And we're able to cycle back and say, hey, how can we improve this? The thing is that, and knowledge, of course, is the keystone for this, but this right now the keystone is more of a chasm, right? So we have this thing where we actually we have lots of structured data. We build these EHR systems and we collect data and we observe how our patients are doing, and then what we do is we actually come back and we write a paper. The paper goes into a journal. Hopefully a lot of people read it. Maybe it might even be influential, but ultimately it sits on a shelf. And those shelves are very important, and it's actually crucial that this gets recorded this way, because that's how we as humans will be able to kind of understand it kind of as we're kind of going through things. But there's still this gap when we actually need to go through and perform the knowledge. How does someone who need to know it know that there's this paper on the shelf that will tell them exactly how to cure their patient, or even mostly? And so hopefully the idea is that computable biomedical knowledge can actually close that gap, because it works more like data, in that it is something that you can look for. It's something that you can act on, something you can match with the situation that you have at hand. And so the goal of MCBK is to actually bridge that gap at the top, to provide that keystone so that this process can move faster, because it moves deadly slow, like literally deadly slow. And so, of course, with non-computable knowledge, we do have a crucial role and provider, that's libraries. Libraries are those shelves, libraries are those databases, libraries are the people who help us find the things that we need. And MCBK also sees that same role for computable knowledge as for regular knowledge. And so one important part of this organization is that it's actually composed of, I'd say about half of the people that I've encountered with it, and it could be just who I've been associating with, are librarians. They're medical librarians. They're researchers in information sciences who are trying to figure out how do we build this process? How do we close this gap? So, of course, we have the process for fairness of human readable knowledge, findable, accessible, interoperable, reusable, is really, it's really good. It's, again, libraries. It works really well. It's improved over the years. It's evolved. I mean, if you think about even where libraries were 20, 30 years ago compared to where they are today, it's they've just been innovating constantly to help us get what we need, answer the questions that we have. And it's, but it's still human readable knowledge. So it's really not as actionable as it could be. And it's still humans. There is a lot of value in human to human interaction, especially around these things. But when you're sitting with a patient trying to figure out why the current treatment plan hasn't been working, or what the alternative options are, you can't just kind of run to the library to figure it out and have a week to sort through this, especially with the way medical practice happens now. You need that to come with you. It needs to be in the office with you. It needs to be able to actively respond to the situation at hand. And so what we need to do is we actually need to make computable knowledge fair and trusted. And so we argue that the effort of the MCBK program, organization, movement, we're still trying to figure out exactly what we are. There's a few chapters that have started up, and I think Michigan is actually hosting an organization for it. There's actually membership now and so forth. But the goal is to actually make computable knowledge fair. So we published a manifesto in 2018. This was like literally right after I started working with them. They've been having a bunch of meetings. And so the vision from the manifesto is that we need to be able to support action towards improving human health. And we need to be able to do that using biomedical knowledge that can be brought to the point of delivery. We need to be able to equitably and efficiently serve the needs of all the participants. And when I say all participants, I don't just mean medical providers. I mean the people who are being served as patients, the people who are not even necessarily patients yet, but need to help understand how to avoid disease in the first place. And we also need to make sure that the knowledge is reflective of the best current evidence in science. And so the thing is that you can build a lot of these databases, but if you don't have someone actively maintaining them, updating them, and so forth, you're not actually going to, you might actually have something that's misleading. You want to make sure that you have as much as you can get. And I believe this is, yeah. Then the last one is we want to do this by providing a mechanism for a mechanism for providing CBK and an ecosystem around it that will do this using FAIR principles. So we've got a community that that all agrees to the manifesto. We've got chapters around the world that are springing up in Asia, in Europe, we've got an Australia chapter, all sorts of cool stuff. We've had a number of in-person annual meetings before the pandemic, and we keep trying to have an in-person one now, but we haven't been able to do. We've been doing them virtually since then. We have a number of deliverables, including two papers on CBK metadata, and a white paper from the British Computer Society, and a study of CBK repositories. So basically, there's been some serious academic work that's been coming out of this. And myself, I helped work on a paper that was actually around the technical infrastructure principles, and it was around basically this was meant to be kind of a bottom-up, like what do we need for the technical infrastructure for FAIR. And it was really kind of important that the infrastructure itself be support the FAIR principles, but also that infrastructure be open and encourage open knowledge, and have the ability to to trust the infrastructure, but also trust that have a way to determine how much you should trust the knowledge that's in the infrastructure. And yes, I know there's a lot of knowledge that's proprietary, and there's a lot of things that make sense to not share. But the important thing is that ultimately, if you're going to try to if you're going to try to convince someone that something is true, you kind of need to show your work, and that's that can be done through this framework. Okay, so towards that, I didn't actually expand. Did I do that? No, I didn't. So CBK, I've been talking about CBK a lot. So CBK is Computable Biomedical Knowledge. MM is the metadata model that is required to publish information about CBK. So the CBK-MM is the Computable Biomedical Knowledge metadata model. We are trying to build basically interchange language for not the knowledge itself, but the metadata about that knowledge. So like, where is it from? What is it about? What's its title? What are the parts to it? What can I do with it? And we want to be able to do basic things like index and search, and doing filtering and faceted search, and like determine whether or not it's even the right format for us to work with. These aren't, none of this is rocket science, but it's also work that hasn't been done yet. This is not an infrastructure that exists today. So, the first thing that we did was we actually looked at a lot of different things around what kind of CBK are we working with here. And so these are some of the different, laser pointer. Some of the different things. I particularly like the ontologies, and sometimes I like terminologies. A lot of the people in the group, I like Bayesian models too. A lot of people in the group work a lot with computable phenotypes or rule sets, and so forth. And I know a lot of people who like computable workflows. And the cool thing though is that like the people that we have in this group cover a lot of this area. We've got people who work with all of these different things, and we're all coming from very different perspectives about even what we think is important with this with computable knowledge. And even when we walked in the room, had very different ideas about what counted as computable biomedical knowledge. It took, actually, I probably spent about 20 minutes explaining why ontologies are computable biomedical knowledge, even though for us, it's probably pretty clear why that's the case. Or even like a biomedical database. It's a database, it's not knowledge, except that most databases actually contain summaries of research findings. There's some like geo or that contain like individual observations, but something like something like the 1,000 Genome Project that doesn't put in like every last one. That's rolled up. That's like this SNP is associated with this disease. That's knowledge. Okay, so we are a group of at least 9 9 organizations. There are others that I actually kind of ran out of room for, but so there's oops, there we go. We've been, we've basically have a lot of participants, including Mayo, U Michigan, NIH. We have some people from various other places. A lot of these people, again, are medical librarians or are in information sciences. We have some doctors in there as well. We have some people like me who are just kind of hackers and computer scientists. And the cool thing is that we're kind of all motivated towards the same goal. And we've started to be able to talk about the same stuff. And I was actually able to teach them all about RDF, which was really fun. It was really like teaching if you can go teach a librarian how RDF works, they're going to hate you for it, or they're going to love you for it, because it's just like they just it just clicked for them, and suddenly everything was like, oh yeah, okay, why aren't all databases like this? So we're trying to follow the W3C working group methods for the most part. We're trying to build consensus, trying to build working examples, going from bottom up, trying to come up with examples that we have, and then try to model those examples, come up with proposals for how to do certain things, and move the modeling forward. And yeah. So we started with a number of ontologies and vocabularies that we thought were good candidates for either integration or just inspiration. Of course, Dublin Core, which is like everywhere, and was, there were too many librarians in the room to not do Dublin Core. But also it's just really useful. The Provenance Ontology, Provo, happy birthday, Prov. It's 10 years old today and has been barely changed and is still being used widely, which is really cool. Dataset catalog actually is a interesting case here, because DCAT was developed to as a way to describe what's going on in the data.gov project. And to talk about open government data. I don't like a lot of it, but it was actually the inspiration to some degree for this. CBK-MM started off by being called KCAT for knowledge catalog. The idea was like DCAT, but for knowledge. And actually that helped a bit. And then schema.org, which has been really cool, but also it's kind of a monolith, but we probably will use some of it. Some of this, though, is that you'll notice all of these are very simple ontologies. Fire isn't on here. Obo isn't on here. A lot of like standard biomedical ontologies are not on here. And that's because it's actually fairly hard to write linked data for fire, and it's really hard to write linked data for obo. And it's really, the time it takes to actually learn this stuff, to learn those ontologies, how to model this stuff in it, it can take days or weeks to get it right. We don't want it to take that long for someone to adopt this. This should be like oh, okay. And then just they start writing it. You could do that with Prov. You could do that with Dublin Core. You can do that with DCAT. You can do that with schema.org. In fact, that's one of the big benefits of schema.org is that it's such a low barrier to entry for people to start publishing it. And that's why search engine optimization, that's why Google's so awful now, is because everyone's like publishing all this great metadata and then they just subvert it. And, we'll hopefully not do that with us. Maybe we'll hopefully be too boring for the search engine optimizers. Okay, so what we've been doing, we started off collecting a bunch of different examples of CBK, and so you're not going to be able to read any of this. I'm sorry. Still going to point things out. So we have Uniprot, which is actually a knowledge graph and a biomedical database. We have Bioportal, and then there's the COVID-19 phenotype documentation. We got a bunch of phenotypes in here. We have some, right, this is I think this is a risk calculator for statin use. Inflammatory network, anthrax post-exposure protocols, and so forth and so on. So, we've got a bunch of different things. Some of it's a bit more computable, some of it's a bit less computable. One thing that we kind of realized as we're going through this is that, depending on a lot of times what counts as computable depends on, the computer and, what software is loaded on it. So there's some things that are very like universally interpretable, right? You can have, you can load RDF or an ontology into a database and it will be interpretable the same way there as it will literally anywhere else in the world. Or you can have a CSV file that needs help, right? You need to interpret it. You need to know what to do with it. But in all those cases, there's software backing it that knows how to work with it. And so the main question ends up being how much support does it need? How specific is it going to be? And so it's more of a gradient than it is an actual like hard and fast rule about what's computable and what isn't. And so we try to be fairly broad and open-minded about what we include in here. Okay, so one thing that we dealt with was, after we came up with these examples, we realized a bunch of things at once. First off, there's going to be a lot of low-hanging fruit in terms of what we can do, right? Dublin Core does a lot of cool stuff by itself. Prov does a lot of cool stuff by itself. But then there's this other stuff like even SCOS. SCOS is really simple, but it's also, it's just one ontology. Well, it's not an ontology, it's a vocabulary, but it's also not just one ontology. So there's SCOS, but then there's SCOS Excel, the extended labels. And then, oh wait, yeah, there's that DL vocabulary that's a subset of SCOS that actually works in OWL. Oh crap, right. There's the HTML version and there's XML, and they do that for all of them. And oh, right, there was revisions too. What do we do? So, and this isn't unique to SCOS or even to ontologies. This happens all over the place. Biomedical databases will publish, they'll have APIs, but then they'll have dumps where they have, 20 different files. And for each file is a table, and then each table is published in 3 different formats. There's a CSV and TSV and Excel and XML and JSON and whatever else. So how do you keep all that straight? So we decided to, so this is actually inspired from Prov, but we decided to rename it. We're kind of doing subproperty. There's this there's a property that's kind of off in a deep dark corner of Prov called specialization of. So we actually decided to come up with our own, and then this is going to be a subproperty of specialization of concretizes. So concretizes, so like the HTML version and the XML version are both concrete instantiations of the SCOS vocabulary as a whole. And then you have these two different you have the subset that's also kind of the same thing, but not really. So they both concretize a more abstract idea of SCOS core. And then, okay, now we're starting to get to something a bit more, kind of unitary. Now we can talk about how SCOS Excel and SCOS Core are both parts of SCOS. This is all compositional. You don't need any of this, or you can make it huge. It doesn't matter. It's up to you what level of detail you want to put into your metadata. And so a lot of the discussions have been around issues like that, like how complicated do we want to let things be? How simple do we want to make it be? How compositional do we want to make it be? We've been using Web Protege for our development, and actually Web Protege has come a long way. I used to not be able to put OWL or property restrictions in there, but now you can actually through this. The entity description editor. You just put in your Manchester notation. I was very happy to see that finally. After how many years? Like 10 years of torture for us, like the DL people. At least, yeah. So yeah, that was very good. And so we've got, the other cool thing is that this comment section is actually really neat. You'll actually get a notification that something you're looking at will, someone will actually have something in there. So we've just started using it, but it's really been beneficial even already, because we just kind of load in all the people who are working on it, and they've been able to contribute already. Okay, so one other important thing about this is that we are, so one piece of the puzzle, so there's kind of the vocabulary, but then there's also like, how do you use the vocabulary? And so this is where I see when we start talking about shackle versus OWL, or or validation versus description. So at least in the genomics world, and I'm pretty sure it's spread beyond that now, there's this idea of minimum information profiles. The first one was minimum information to describe minimum information for a microarray experiment, I believe. So it was Miami. And then there was like minimum information to describe a genomic experiment, and then so forth and so on. And so we kind of took inspiration from that, because really a lot of these things are task driven. How do we know what we want? And so we've been putting together these minimum information profiles for different aspects of CBK resources and artifacts. We're going to use Shackle to formally describe them, but right now they're just conceptual. And this is like very, very draft, so don't even like pretend that this is meaningful. This could all change in 5 minutes. The first one is midcur. I think that's how I want to say it. Minimum information to describe a knowledge resource. So knowledge resources are kind of the top level class in CBK-MM. There could be abstracted to be very specific. They're the things that have the, should I put it on here? Wait, no, this is a different thing. So this is stuff like, title, description, issued, modified, creator, publisher, and subject. This actually does a lot of work, by the way. The idea that you can tag a knowledge artifact or knowledge resource with just mesh terms actually makes a huge difference, because those subjects are, they can be very detailed. You can put it in from whatever concept scheme you like, and they're generally well understood. And there's like literally, there's hundreds of thousands of terms out there. There's the entire UMLS that all fits in here. And so what is this knowledge artifact about? It's just really simple, but then it can be very very effective for providing that out. And then, of course, licensing and rights. So these are kind of like the basics for what you would hope to see in a knowledge resource, to know kind of, what is it? How do I find it? Do I like this? Then, of course, there's the structure that I talked about before with SCOS, and we might want to, that's things like part of, concretizes, subset, revision of. And so that's MCusker, minimum information to structure a knowledge graph, or knowledge resource, sorry. And that's that was actually probably the one that took us the longest to figure out, is how to deal with that stuff. This next one, Miyaka, is actually fairly straightforward, and actually a lot of it's borrowed from DCAT. It's we're actually reusing some of the same predicate names, but we're not using the same URIs because theirs are specific to DCAT distributions and data sets. And it's not entirely clear if a distribution in there is the same thing as a knowledge resource or knowledge artifact. So we have things like landing page and media type and download URLs and endpoint URLs. So that is what that is. Okay, so this is where stop talking about the what we've done and where this turns into a recruiting event. Actually, we are looking for people to help us. This is, right now we've got a number of people from academia. We've got some people from kind of the consulting space, but we really want to get pharma involved in this. We really want to get people who are developing EHR systems, people who are out there developing knowledge graphs, developing knowledge resources in general, people who want their computable knowledge to be noticed, people who want to find and use that knowledge. And this is, sometimes it's the same person, and people who want to find and collect CBK. So, and people who are just interested in like the modeling problem, right? So one thing is that we have two ontologists on the team right now, and we kind of go back and forth. And sometimes, I try very hard to bring the less technical people along with it, but it'd be good to get kind of like people with a broader experience involved in it. Tuesdays at 2 p.m. And there's a Zoom link I can send you guys, get you on a mailing list. And so, yeah, that's it. Really, we're still in the process of developing it. We really want to kind of make this a real deal. We're hoping to really build out some actual knowledge resources based on this, and try to get some things in play where, like we can actually just like catalog all the knowledge we've got and see what we can find, see what we can use. I'm willing to do the ontology index at least. And so yeah, these are the people who have been on the team, on the committee. Pretty much all of them have been volunteering their time for this. This is not a funded project at all. And so this has been really great working with them. And thank you.
Thanks very much. We've got some time for questions. Lena. Oh, here.
So I think one of the things, and I wasn't involved in Schema.org, but I was involved in Provo. I think one of the things that we had was like the data implementers, right? People pushing for the model primer and applications, and so like, do you think that's what we need? I mean, I'm specifically focusing on that one slide where you said, yes, Schema.org, great, Dublin Core, great, OBO, yeah, we need more help, more people using it. Like, what do you think we need to kind of like get these ontologies out there?
Yeah, so I think for this, we need people who are going to actually use this both to publish. So like, we need people who are interested in certain kinds of CBK that want to make sure that it's faithfully described. We want people who want to be able to then find it and aggregate it. So the implementers who are actually going to build the databases and the search engines and so forth that will actually use this. And then we also need the people who are actually going to try to use it in the end. I mean, we've got a bunch of those because we have a lot of medical librarians, but but yeah, so I think that, like implementers are going to be a big one, but also modelers. Really, those are the two big things, I think.
Is anybody on? I'm not on are there any questions in the chat? Were you on? Okay, while she's checking, any questions in the room?
I can go, but we should defer to.
Yeah.
Oh, is somebody over there? Oh, there's one online. Okay, great.
So the question is, and you probably need to log in online because they're asking about how to get the information, how to get the resources about this, how to get involved.
Okay. Yeah. None of it's published yet. So if they probably have if they have my contact information, have them email me. I will get them added to the mailing list, and so that they can start
All right, I'll
participating.
send you your email in private.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Great talk. No, I'm interested in, I'm a physician, but I want to know, how do you prevent, wasted work? Because you have so many silos around the world who are working on the project. And I can just imagine that some people are doing the same project, like a malaria here, malaria in South Asia,
Right.
and how do you prevent redundancy and keep it efficient? Are you collaborating together, or
Well, so we're not producing the knowledge. We're only trying to collect and identify it, right? And so the fact that there might be multiple projects for malaria, we're hoping that through this process they'll actually be able to find each other, because they'll see that they're working on the same subject area, that they're maybe producing similar or hopefully complementary knowledge that they can help benefit from each other. And if not, if it's if it is wasted, then they can at least try to coordinate better.
Yeah, do you think that maybe an overseer of projects might be more efficient, or?
That, in theory, yeah, but then I mean, so that's a double-edged sword, right? When you have someone who's trying to efficiently allocate resources towards one problem versus another, then you still have the problem that you have one person just deciding what's important and what needs to be funded and what deserves one team and what deserves 2 or 3 or 4 teams. And really, if you're talking about if you're talking worldwide, there's no coordinator of that at all, right? You're talking, I mean, so like EU or WHO or one of those things, they can coordinate those things and they can help kind of connect people, but they're not going to be able to tell the US to stop doing research in X because they're working on it in Uganda or vice versa. And so the fact that there's so redundancy also is about trying to can sometimes be about localizing knowledge into a particular situation. So a low resource setting for a particular treatment will need different kinds of treatments to work robustly than somewhere that is high resource. And so sometimes you do need that redundancy just to make sure that it's actually available to everyone. But kind of within the space of actually having some sort of world authority for accumulating.
Or maybe just a global forum, that
yeah. I
that
mean,
way everyone can chat
Yeah.
on one global forum.
Right. So within the space of computable biomedical knowledge, that is what MCBK is. We actually are having a global meeting. I believe it's in October, where there are kind of regional or national chapters of MCBK that are forming up. And then the global meeting, everyone will come together and we'll, give each other pats on the back, and we'll tell each other what we're up to and be able to figure out what's going on. And some of us will be better than others. Even from the very beginning with MCBK, there were a lot of participants from outside the United States. Even though, so the first meeting that I went to was at NLM, and was based on, mostly U.S. researchers, but we had people coming in from the UK, from China, from everywhere, even from the very beginning. So this is, we're hopefully well connected to make this happen.
Great talk. So I was along the lines of his, comment, make it more decentralized, and so that, there's not just one single authority, but there's a group of people who does not need any permission to maybe even join the MCBK. I wonder if that's a model that, the current MCK would think about. And also, I also have a question on incentivizing people to translate the documents into computable knowledge, because that requires some effort and potentially funding. And how does MCBK, planning to sustain that for the long term?
Right. So we're not actually doing the knowledge translation ourselves, and we're not publishing any metadata ourselves. So we're hoping that this will be, so one way to make it so that everyone feels like they have permission to publish this data is to make it simple, remove any licensing restrictions around the use of the CBK-MM, which we are going to be doing, and to get buy-in from diverse stakeholders within the space. So, and that's why I've been trying, and we'll continue to try to get people who are really coming from many different backgrounds to participate and contribute and come to a consensus with us about it. I can put this model together tomorrow. That's not what this is about. This is about making sure that everyone has a stake in it and everyone knows that this is for them too. As far as the actual metadata itself, that's an open question, right? There are a lot of models for publishing metadata out on the web and letting anyone do it, and then figuring out, well, okay, so how do I actually trust this metadata? How do I do? That's something that we're still exploring. We haven't really gotten to that point yet. Right now, we're just talking about title and description at this point, and so, but so we're going to need something so that we know that when we publish it, it's going to be trustworthy, even if it's not like officially registered with such and so, because there is no such and so. We're all a bunch of universities trying to make this thing work, and so the idea is that everyone, like with anything from W3C. So this is along those lines. It only happens because everyone agrees it's going to happen. If they think it's the right way to go. If it turns out not to be the right way to go, then we're not going to succeed, and something else will hopefully be able to do it better than we do.
Okay, that was really good, Jamie. Thanks. So comment and then some questions.
Okay.
I like the DCAT inspiration. I could kind of see that running through, and it definitely solves a problem that we've had with DCAT. When you start with a data set, you use the triad to then find your next artifact. Could be this, could be another data set, could be results, and so forth. So I think that helps with really understanding what we mean by the results better. So I like that. Colloquially, we refer to this problem as the and the findability problem of that downstream knowledge as the where the hell are my Kaplan-Meier curves? Because this is what happens. They right. Propagate through PowerPoints and elsewhere, and you lose that chain of custody. DCAT helps a little bit at the beginning, but the knowledge itself can get lost along the way.
Yeah.
So I guess my question then is there's a bunch of projects that are in this space, or at least kind of in this space. So things like digital research objects, the Fair-Seek project, some of them that are making more of an effort to really capture the compute that goes along with it as well. So you have
Right.
true reproducibility. Do you envision that being part of it? Do you envision an alignment to that coming together as well?
So the digital research objects and those sorts of things and computational workflows and a lot of those projects are more specific than this effort. So we're trying to focus on kind of like the broad things. So like there's a lot of things in here that aren't research objects because it's like well established medical knowledge that has kind of been rolled up and it's like, well, you give aspirin for to manage heart disease, and that's like a piece of knowledge that we can encode and store in a thing. But it's not like we're doing new research for it. We might cite existing research, but we can actually roll that up into some sort of artifact and have it there, and then we can cite it, we can find it, we can use it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your talk. I'm doing the ontology aggregation about the data in library, museum, and galleries. So I also used these kind of metadata like Dublin Core or DCAT, and also the object reuse exchange from the Open Archive initiative. But we are focused on different topics. So I want to know whether you use some other metadata standards about the biomedical, some specific ones?
A lot of it is just, well, so not yet. We're still like literally what you saw is all we have of our model so far. And so it's very generic. There are some pieces around like whether we're going to need to break out like DC term subject into something more specific because there's like the domain and there's maybe like the way it's being used. And then there's other things like the sorry. They're like the subclasses of knowledge resource and knowledge artifact that can be very specific. So biomedical database is going to be a subclass, and we've got a bunch of other things under there, phenotype and hold on. Oh wait, no, I'm not up anymore, am I? Don't worry about it. Basically, it's more about the classes that are in there, but I'm envisioning this as being available for computable knowledge in general. There's nothing in the structure per se that is going to be limiting it to CBK, at least not yet. So it's really hopefully useful for any computable knowledge.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Then I just have a comment. I had been involved in this since I think the early days. It really had tremendous momentum before COVID. It really had visibility at NIH with Patty Brennan giving their initial keynote from the National Library of Medicine, and then COVID kind of messed with everything. But I think it's really got traction, and I think the world is moving to computable knowledge in topic X. This is just biomedical. So I would just encourage people to get involved and actually ask the hard questions like what Oshani was asking. And I'm looking at you because you said John's opening keynote said, get the sustainability, get the funding model down.
Right.
This program doesn't have its fundability model
Yeah.
down yet, but it's exploring options. It's exploring membership-based options like W3C. It's exploring other funding options as well, and potentially smart contract-based incentive.
Yeah.
Web3 come tomorrow in the Decentralized Knowledge Graph Day. So get involved, I guess, is my advertisement, and Jamie's advertisement too.
Yeah, and one of the major pieces of our angle on FAIR is that we're adding T to FAIR, so FAIR plus T, so trustable. And one of the best ways to do that is actually to have some sort of authentication of these artifacts, and you need some sort of cryptographic structure around that in order to actually validate them to make sure that you're getting what you're promised.
Okay, so with that, we'll close this session. Do come back at 3:30. We're going to have some really, okay.
So I'm starting the 3:30 session. I was going to do some sponsor remarks. So maybe since we've got a few minutes, I'll do those now
Yeah, go for it.
to not steal away time from the speakers. So I'll be opportunistic and do that. Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you.
All right, so I'm fortunate enough to work for AstraZeneca and within the oncology data science group, leading a team called Semantic Data Integration, which is all about fair data and knowledge graphs. And we were able to have AstraZeneca help sponsor this because of their real desire to be in this space, to recruit in this space, to use knowledge graphs really broadly as a solution around data integration. So I'm joined by my colleague Ian Meisner in the back, who leads our data products and products team. So Ian is helping us build everything that we need to do to really make our knowledge graphs effective for solving real deep biological problems, especially those in oncology and immuno-oncology. So as I said, we've been in this space for a long time and kind of been part of this journey for quite some time, coming out of early days in the IMI OpenFacts project. So we were contributors to that as well. FAIR came straight out of the IMI OpenFacts project. And for those of you that participated, you'll know the godmother of FAIR, Carol Goebel, and the godfather of FAIR, Baron Bonds, came up with the terms. Actually, Carol came up with the acronyms. Baron arranged them in the right letters. So that's at least the story that I've been told. So that came out of the IMI OpenFacts project. And if we think about FAIR as really your foundation for this, you can't really do knowledge graphs until you have FAIR. But it's not just the principles, it's the implementation patterns. And I think that's really where we're coming together now as a community. DCAT is a really important implementation pattern that the whole community is seeing. And so we can use that foundational layer of FAIR, think about data mesh in the middle and knowledge graphs at the top, as knowledge graph being sort of your ultimate application of the whole data mesh, data centricity approach. And so AstraZeneca is a big believer in data centricity. I'm going beyond just data driven and getting people thinking about their data, valuing their data, having the culture around data, but really data centricity. So can we really make it so that we don't build a new application every time we have a new problem? Can we reuse our data layers? And can we use those to really drive the insights? So that's really where we want to come together on this and why knowledge graphs become important. So within AstraZeneca right now, we've got 5 big knowledge graphs that have started organically from different parts of the company. 3 of them all use the same overarching entity and application ontology. So this is how we bring together our entities and Lego bricks and then put them together on use cases in an application ontology. And where I'm going with this is reminded from John's talk this morning about how do we bring this together as a community. And so one of the things I've also been fortunate enough to be part of is the Pistoia Alliance Fair Data Implementation Group. And so this is now entering into phase 3. And we've done previous things such as putting together a fair data toolkit, putting together a FAIR for Clin guide, which really kind of shows how clinicians and really people that are using medical ontologies can bring this together in a fair way. And this year's focus for phase 3 is really about a generic ontology. And so this is, the name might change a little bit. I think it's still being bandied around a little bit. I'm like, why aren't we calling it biopharma? Do we really want to exclude our biotech people? So we'll see. Maybe I'll win on this, maybe I won't. But in any case, this is AstraZeneca, Roche, BMS, Pfizer, a number of the other companies in this space that are doing a really similar approach. We have something like an entity ontology, which is going to describe how we think about a sample or a study or a subject. We have some ways of putting them together in a common data model. It might be what John was showing that looks more like an ERD, or it might be something that looks more like an ontology kind of put together. Can we come up with a common model here? So in some ways, this feels like the old translational medicine ontology back in the old days in the W3C, but I think it's now kind of come back full circle. So I guess 2 things. So one, with the idea of the ask. If you are Pistoia members, please help and join in and participate. If you're not, it's worth taking a look at. And second, just thanks so much for coming to this conference to continue to support it. It's really important. We think this is the way that we want to drive these things going forward. So thank you for indulging me, and we'll see everybody back at 3:30 for the next session.
And do come back. Because we've got some really cool talks, and then this panel, I'm biased, I'm moderating it, but the panel at 5 o'clock on knowledge graphs and large language models, I think should be really cool. So please come back. Okay, break then.